I want to talk to you about guns, why we have them, why the Bill of Rights guarantees that we can have them, and why my right to have a gun is more important than your right to rail against it in the press. I believe every good journalist needs to know why the Second Amendment must be considered more essential than the First Amendment. This may be a bitter pill to swallow, but the right to keep and bear arms is not archaic. It's not an outdated, dusty idea some old dead white guys dreamed up in fear of the redcoats. No, it's just as essential to liberty today as it was in 1776. These words may not play well at the press club, but it's still the gospel down at the corner bar and grill. And your efforts to undermine the Second Amendment, to deride it and denigrate it, to degrade it, to readily accept diluting it, and eagerly promote redefining it, threaten not only the physical well-being of millions of Americans, but also the core concept of individual liberty our founding fathers struggled to perfect and protect. So, now you know what doubtless does not surprise you. I believe strongly in the right of every law-abiding citizen to keep and bear arms for what I think are good reasons. The original amendments we refer to as the Bill of Rights contain 10 of what the constitutional framers termed unalienable rights. These rights are ranked in random order and are linked by their essential equality. The Bill of Rights came to us with blinders on it. It doesn't recognize color or class or wealth. It protects not just the rights of actors or editors or reporters, but extends even to those we love to hate. That's why the most heinous criminals have rights until they're convicted of a crime. The beauty of the Constitution can be found in the way it takes human nature into consideration. We are not a docile species capable of coexisting within a perfect society under everlasting benevolent rule. We are what we are, egotistical, corruptible, vengeful, sometimes even a bit power mad. The Bill of Rights recognizes this and builds the barricades that need to be in place to protect the individual. You, of course, remain zealous in your belief that a free nation must have a free press and free speech to battle injustice, unmask corruption, and provide a voice for those in need of a fair and impartial forum. I agree wholeheartedly. A free press is vital to a free society. But I wonder how many of you will agree with me that the right to keep and bear arms is not just equally vital, but the most vital to protect all the other rights we enjoy. I say that the Second Amendment is, in order of importance, the First Amendment. It is America's first freedom, the one right that protects all the others. Among freedom of speech, of the press, of religion, of assembly, of redress of grievances, it is the first among equals. It alone offers the absolute capacity to live without fear. The right to keep and bear arms is the one right that allows rights to exist at all. Now, either you believe that, or you don't, and you must decide. Because there's no such thing as a free nation where police and military are allowed the force of arms, but individual citizens are not. That's a big brother knows best theater of the absurd that has never boded well for the present peasant class, the working class, or even for reporters. Yes, our Constitution provides the doorway for your news and commentary to pass through free and unfettered. But that doorway to freedom is framed by the muskets that stood between a vision of liberty and absolute anarchy at a place called Concord Bridge. Our revolution began when the British sent redcoats door to door to confiscate the people's guns. They didn't succeed. The muskets went out the back door with their owners. Emerson said it best, "By the rude bridge that arched the flood, their flag to April's breeze unfurled, here once the embattled farmers stood and fired the shot heard around the world. King George called us rabble-rousers, rabble in arms. But with God's grace, George Washington and many brave men gave us our country. Soon after, God's grace and a few great men gave us our Constitution. It's been said that the creation of the United States is the greatest political act in history. I'll sign that. In the next 2 centuries, though, freedom did not flourish. The next revolution, the French, collapsed in the bloody terror, followed by Napoleon's tyranny. There's been no shortage of dictators since in many countries. Hitler, Mussolini, Stalin, Mao, Idi Amin, Castro, Pol Pot, all these monsters began by confiscating private arms, then literally soaking the earth with the blood of tens and tens of millions of their people. Ah, the joys of gun control. Now, I doubt any of you would prefer a rolled-up newspaper as a weapon against a dictator or a criminal intruder. Yet, in essence, that's what you've asked our loved ones to do through an ill-contrived and totally naive campaign against the Second Amendment. Besides, how can we entrust to you the Second Amendment when you are so stingy with your own First Amendment? I say this because of the way in recent days you've treated your own, those journalists you consider the least among you. How quick you've been to finger the paparazzi with blame and to eye the tabloids with disdain. How eager you've been to draw a line where there is none, to demand some distinction within the First Amendment that sneers, they are not one of us. How readily you let your lesser brethren take the fall, as if their rights were not as worthy and their purpose not as pure and their freedom not as sacred as yours. So now, as politicians consider new laws to shackle and gag paparazzi, who among you will speak out? Who here will stand and defend them? Well, if you won't, I will. Because you do not define the First Amendment. It defines you. And it is bigger than you, big enough to embrace all of you, plus all those you would exclude. That's how freedom works.